in the travel, here we go. Got that AI on the low, taking flights to and fro, booking trips in a snap with a simple chat flow. AI, revolutionizing how we roll. Gonna hop on a plane.
Welcome to another episode of the Everything AI in Travel podcast, where we hear from the makers, shapers, and buyers of AI technology in the travel space. Here's your host, Tony Carne.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Everything AI and Travel podcast. And we've had a little break, and so we're back for H2 of 2026. And we've got a fabulous series of amazing founders and builders to come and tell everyone what they're doing, particularly at the intersection of travel and AI. And today is no different. I've got a fabulous founder doing something that I think is pretty incredible that I wanted to share with everyone. And so welcome to the show today, Veerle Wit. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm in freezing cold Melbourne. You're in very hot Amsterdam, suffering through the third phase of the heat wave. I think I'd rather
Yes.
change places with you. But before we get on to Travel Diaries app, which is the focus of our conversation here, I'd love to
Yeah.
know a little bit more about kind of your background in travel in particular.
Yeah.
I think I've had a fairly charmed life when it comes to falling into the travel industry and getting to travel to some amazing places, but you look like you might have even topped me. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved in travel and what you did in the early
Yes.
days.
Yes, I love to. I think my first introduction to travel was when I was 15. I went on an exchange year to Brazil. I lived there for a year with an exchange family. I traveled all over the country with other exchange students, and that kind of really fueled my fire of curiousness to explore more of the world. So after that, I just continued traveling as much as I could, anytime I could. Then I went studying, and I studied first I studied tourism, then later on I studied journalism. And after my study, I went backpacking for 4 months in South America. And before I went on that trip, I was looking for a tool where I could really capture my adventures in a digital journal. We'll get to that later, but that's where Travel Diaries started. The idea for Travel Diaries started. So I made that trip. I came back. I actually started building Travel Diaries. And in the meantime, I started as a travel journalist. When Travel Diaries launched, I got my first assignment for National Geographic. I traveled all over the world for them. So for 5 years, I did around 30 trips. I started with a lot of online publications that grew into a lot of print publications. I worked as the editor-in-chief of the website. Yeah, and from there, I continued traveling. I continued building Travel Diaries, and it's still a huge passion of mine.
Totally. So like in travel journalism, that to me sounds
Yeah.
like pretty much the number one job that everybody would want, right? So how do you
Yeah.
actually end up with that job? Like, what's the pathway to getting such an incredible gig like that?
Yeah. I think this not only in becoming a travel journalist, but in anything that you want in life, you just need to go for it. You need to create a path. In my case, I started doing the right study. And then after that, I found an internship it was Getaway Travel, it was called, and they had a number of online travel magazines. I worked there for half a year. I wrote 3 articles per day. So I built a huge portfolio. I also had a great managing editor who trained me. So I really got to train my writing. And then from there on, I have to say I was also a little bit lucky, because from that internship, a girl who worked there, she started working at National Geographic. And I reached out to her saying, hey, that's amazing. You're working at National Geographic. If you ever need a freelancer, let me know, because I graduated now and I started as a freelancer. And she was like, we only work with a limited number of freelancers, but I'll keep you in mind. And then it so happened that a few weeks after that, the digital nomad that they were working with, and the digital nomad at the time was a person traveling places. It was actually sponsored by certain destinations. They would travel places, do online reports, like create blogs. You could follow this person on social media. And they had a trip planned to Germany, and she didn't want to go, or she couldn't go, and she also was going to quit. And then they had a problem, because they had this trip planned, and then this girl said, I know someone, maybe Veerle can do it. And that is how I kind of rolled into that business. Yeah.
Just a sliding doors moment, as so
Yes.
often happens
Yeah.
in travel.
Yeah. Exactly.
I had a similar one when I first started with Intrepid, because similar to you, I'd spent a lot of time in South America, and my dream
Yeah.
was to go back to South America. That's what I wanted to do
Yeah.
more than anything else. And I saw an ad for this company, Intrepid Travel, I'd never heard of, and I
Yeah.
looked on their website, such as it was in the early 2000s, and they had South America on their website, and I'm like, I could
Yeah.
just turn around and go straight back to South America. I'd already been a tour guide in Central Australia, like I had the
Yeah.
qualifications for the job, and I thought this is brilliant. And
Yeah.
long story short, when they said we'd love to have you as part of our team, I was like, amazing, Caracas, Buenos Aires, let's go. Where am I off to? And they said Cairo, and I went, oh.
Oh.
So, oh, that wasn't quite
Yeah.
what I had in mind, but similar to you, like sliding doors moment. Had
Yeah.
that not happened to me, I ended up being one of the first 3 guides they sent out to the Middle East, and then I ended
Yeah.
up getting to be the manager on the ground of the Middle East, and that set my entire career up. These things
Right.
happen, and they generally happen for a
Yeah.
reason, and a really good one. So
Exactly.
enough
Yeah.
about me, but moving on, you've somewhat introduced what you're up to now with Travel
Yeah.
Diaries. Give us a bit more of a feel for exactly what Travel Diaries is, who uses it, how they
Yeah.
use it.
Yeah. Yes, I already told you that when I went to South America, I was looking for a digital tool where I could capture my adventure. So I was looking for a digital journaling tool, one where I could add like long text combined with photos, route maps that I could keep private or share as a blog with friends and family, and that I could order as a printed book when I got back home. And I was like, this has to exist. There's no way this doesn't exist yet. And I wasn't even specifically looking for a travel journaling tool. I was just looking for a digital journaling tool. And there was just nothing out there, nowhere. Like I searched the whole World Wide Web. You basically had the photo book software and you had the blogging websites and nothing in between. It would be amazing if we could combine the best of those tools, bring those together so you have the best of both worlds. So I had that idea in mind. I went to South America, talked to other travelers, trying to get an idea, would people want this? Would they want to use this? And how would they want to use it? Then I came back, I started my master's studies, wrote a business plan. And then when I graduated, I got some funding. And then I hired the first team of developers to build the web application, which launched 8 months later. And that was in June 2014. So yeah, basically that's a digital travel journal tool where you can create your own travel journals. You can keep them private, you can share them with friends and family and order them as a printed book. Yeah, and like I think 5 years later or 6 years later, so for the first 5 years I did this next to my work as a travel journalist. And then in 2019, actually with my partner who is a photographer, we also do stories together. We went on a round the world trip for an indefinite period of time. There I fell pregnant with my daughter, and then I thought for a long time I had been feeling like I kind of have to make a decision at some point to go all in either on my travel journalism career or on Travel Diaries. If I want to grow this, if I really want to grow it, then I need to go all in. But the moment never felt right. But when I got pregnant with my daughter, I was like, this is the right time to start traveling a little bit less, really focus on my business, start growing it. So then I wrote a growth plan. And when my daughter was almost 1 year old, I secured the first investment with Transavia, the airline. And from there on, we could start building. First of all, the software was already 5 years old. So we started rebuilding it completely to the newest cloud techniques. We also launched our travel inspiration platform because by that time we already had 100,000 users on the app. And with my experience of in travel content, in creating travel content, I thought it would be super nice to create this platform where we can also inspire our base of travelers. And one of the most asked things of our users was a mobile app, which we didn't have yet. So we started building the mobile app. Then the pandemic hit. We people stopped traveling for a while. It was not great timing, but actually it was not too bad for us because it also really allowed us to focus for a while on that whole rebuild to the cloud, launching the mobile app. And then when everything was kind of finished, people started traveling again. And then in the meantime, we also launched our first white label baby diaries for the creation of baby books and pregnancy diaries. Yeah.
I can kind of just go back a little bit. In that
Yes.
version, that V1 version that
Yeah.
you built before you tore it down and rebuilt it, you're doing a
Yeah.
master's, you're off traveling, doing travel journalism. Like,
Yeah.
how's that software getting built? Like, did somebody fund it up until that point? You're just taking the
Yeah.
money you were earning and putting it into this business. Like, how
Yeah.
did that work?
No, so I wrote the business plan during my study, and when I graduated in the summer, then the business plan was finished. I was talking to Credits. They're like a micro credits company offering small credits to entrepreneurs. And basically, I was a broke student who
Mm.
didn't know anything, and I was scared to death because I think I was borrowing something like, I think it was like 30,000 euros or something, which
Mm.
was to me. And then I had to put in a little bit of money myself. So I lent some money like from my dad. And I think I had to put in maybe 3 or 5K, which was huge
Still a
amount
lot.
of money
Yeah,
for me
exactly.
at that
Yeah.
time. It was a lot of money. And I remember when I got the call from the microcredit company saying that I got the loan, and I was actually he was like, "This is good news," but I was just like, "Oh my god, I'm scared now," because after you need to start repaying the debt, or like, how do you say it? Interest
Yeah.
straight away
Mm.
each month, and then after 6 months, I needed to already start repayment, which for me at the time was already like 1 month of rent of my apartment, and I just started out. I just graduated, and I just started out as a freelance travel writer, so it was insecure, but I just took the risk. And yeah, so with that money, I hired a team of 4 developers to build the initial version of the software. And initially, they said this will take us 4 months and then we'll launch. But it turned out to be a lot more complex than they thought,
Mm.
especially, and this is a bit technical, but the most complex part is showing text on in the editor itself. The text needs to show exactly the way it will show up in the PDF or in the printed book, but text shows up differently in on each device in each browser. So they had to build some complex code around that to make that happen, and we got stuck for months on that specific issue. But in the end, they tackled it. So 8 months later, eventually, we launched the web application.
Wowee. And
And
how is I actually, I think it's the perfect time to start a business. There's a few
yeah,
times in your life where like it's
yeah,
actually really good. And I think like when you're totally broke, and at the
yeah.
very beginning don't know,
Yes,
absolutely great
exactly.
time. And like I have a 15-year-old
Yeah,
old daughter, and my advice to her is if you're going to give something a crack, just give it a crack
yeah,
before there's a lot of stuff riding on the line, and you got a family, and
yeah,
things make that a lot harder. So I love that bit
yeah,
about it. So
yeah,
congratulations and well done on
yeah.
that. But
Thank
like,
you.
how are you making money? Like, how does this thing make money way back in the
Yeah,
beginning there that you could
yeah,
actually pay back that interest?
yeah. In the beginning, I was paying back because I already started paying back before we launched. So I was mostly earning money as a travel writer and then putting all that money. That was going well. So with that money, I could also fund Travel Diaries, basically. But then we launched, we actually got some nice PR. And I remember we got one publication in the weekend, like the weekend magazine of one of a famous Dutch newspaper. And I was always checking the stats behind the screen, you know how you do that in the beginning, checking every user. And that weekend, we had 500 new people sign up, like creating an account. And we had the first book order.
Wow.
So that was
Yeah.
yeah. And then from there, it had a snowball effect because when people share these stories with friends and family, they're like, hey, what is this tool? And they also get on board. And also, I think the term Travel Diaries just worked out well. We from the beginning we launched in Dutch and English, and we were performing quite well in the search engines. So initially we had 1,000 new users each month. And so the app was completely free, and we only earned money from the printed books. And I think quite soon we were making 3K a month in book orders, which was not enough to pay my salary.
Mhm.
But like 80% of my time was still going into freelance writing, and I was earning enough money with that to even hire some developers and people to support me in the projects. Combining that money worked out well.
Super
Yeah,
cool. It's so good. So good. I'm just kind
yeah,
of reflecting on my own travels, and I think I've created
yeah,
a couple of books when my daughter was very young. So I think the first kind of
yeah,
trips that we took her on when she was 6 months and maybe one or two. I can't remember the name of the software, but it wasn't specific for travel, and it was just
yeah,
photos really and a little bit of text. And I
yeah,
think it was like Snapfish or something fish. I don't know, some
yeah,
kind of software, and it was actually really clunky and hard to use. It
yeah,
was like it was
yeah,
quite horrible. I don't think it was overly expensive, like maybe $15 or $50 or something to get the
Yeah.
book. But those books are still
Yeah.
like, a part of our lives, get them out and look at
Yeah.
them. And it's such a
Yeah.
incredible memento of
Yeah.
that time. So I can definitely see the
Yeah.
attraction. But
Yeah.
who's your classic user? I doubt I'm your classic user. Who's the classic user of Travel Diaries?
Yeah, actually, it's you.
Okay.
It's typically, I think, our number one user of the platform is the boomer generation, the people that's like the they still really value, they love to write. First of all, that is a much bigger part of that generation. They love to write, they love to spend time on that. They really value still the printed books. I think the younger generation shares much more on like social media, other platforms like Polar Steps, for example, which are more focused on tracking the adventure and capturing the journey in a more short, a faster way. And I think when you create a journal with Travel Diaries, you need to invest some time, and it's almost like a meditative thing, writing your journal daily, putting your photos in the right place. It's really a creative process. So typically the typical user is the cultural and adventure seeking traveler, like 40, 50 plus, that love to write and
Sure.
have time to do that also.
In my mind, I'm thinking
Yeah.
this is heavily female based. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Or
It's 60% female and
okay,
40% men.
that's
So
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
well,
more female, but definitely we have a lot of men also in our platform.
that's super interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah.
have thought of that. Actually, since you and I first met a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
I've been down
Yeah.
a couple of rabbit holes. One is this
Yeah.
journaling rabbit hole, and then I ended up in
Yeah.
a sub of that, which was like fountain pens. And
Oh, really?
there's
I don't
creators out
know.
there that just do fountain pen like stories on Instagram and on YouTube and whatever, and they have like
Oh,
tens
really?
of thousands of followers. But they
Really?
in the end, they use the pen to write. That's what it's all
Yeah,
about. It's
exactly.
about that.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it cycles
Yeah.
back up. And one of the big ones,
Yeah.
actually connects it back up to travel.
Oh, that's
It's amazing
interesting.
what kind of
Yeah.
genres and passions people have that
Yeah.
you can tap into. So,
Exactly.
like, let's fast forward to closer
Yes.
to now.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is the Everything AI in Travel podcast. There must be an AI
Yes.
story in here somewhere. Tell us kind
Yes.
of what you're
Yes.
doing now with Travel Diaries. And I know you're trying to move it closer to working with the industry, for example.
Yes.
Run us through
Yeah.
where we're at now.
Yeah. So right at the very beginning, when we launched Travel Diaries, I already saw an opportunity to work with travel agencies and tour operators because their clients are capturing their stories in our tool. And I thought for the tour operator, there's so much value to become part of that story, to show their advertisement, and then turning their customers basically into ambassadors, gathering the user generated content, like use that for marketing purposes. And for us, it's an advantage if they bring more users to the tool. So I saw ways of working together, but in the beginning, as it was still like a side project, basically, we had some initial partnerships. Then the pandemic happened, and that whole feature fell away. We were not focused on that. Tour operators were not focused on that. But in the recent years, like I think from around 3 years ago, I started noticing again that tour operators, like things were going well again in the travel industry, and more travel agencies and tour operators started focusing on gathering more user generated content, becoming more part of the stories of their customers. So we thought, let's bring this feature back. And it's basically really simple. Tour operators can give out vouchers to their customers to motivate them to capture their stories in Travel Diaries. And once their customers share their stories with friends and family, we show advertisement of the tour operator right next to it saying, Tony is traveling with Intrepid. If you want to make the same amazing trip, check out the offer here. And it's interesting because people on average share with 25 people from their inner circle. They share their stories, and you get visibility around 400 plus times within this circle. People create over, on average, a journal has 16 chapters. I'm not sure, I think like 4,000, or maybe it's more, it's 7,500 words. So it's a lot of content that people actually create, and a lot of times that you are visible within that inner circle. So this is something that we relaunched 2 years ago. And then from there, me and my team started talking like, hey, this is great. We start seeing traction. We start seeing people creating stories, tour operators becoming part of those stories, but actually we can do so much more with this content. And then one of the people in my team started developing an AI dashboard to analyze these user stories to get marketing quotes mentioning the travel company, but also getting reviews from hotels and accommodations, activities, guides, even a future trip mentions that. So if they say next trip, I'd love to go to the fjords in Norway, and to give the tour operators access to all this basically marketing and product insights. So we launched this last year, and this year we launched a V2, and yeah, we're doubling down on that. Like we're further developing it every day. And a next step on that is to develop a plugin so tour operators can actually showcase this content, like the AI generated quotes, for example, on their own website.
Incredible. Yeah, particularly that bit around having your customers tell your story in long form. Like,
Yeah.
I almost
Yeah,
feel like I've
exactly.
been in a marketing brainstorm, like maybe back in my intrepid days,
Yes,
where probably somebody said, wouldn't it be great if we could get our customers write the blog for us? And
exactly.
everyone probably
Yeah,
said, wow, that'd be amazing. And then moved on very
yeah,
quickly thinking,
yeah,
how would that
yeah.
ever happen?
Because how?
Correct.
Exactly. I think like there's a lot of tour operators that already tried it. Like they have their own blogging feature in their own website, but if your tool is not like people will tend to use like existing blogging or journaling platforms in the markets. So I think that is why it's interesting, or why it works. That I think that is why it works to do it this way and not the other way around. And also because then the content is in Travel Diaries, which makes it more credible than having it on your own platform. That being said, we do talk to several tour operators and travel agencies that say we'd love to have our own travel journaling app. We love to have the content on our own platform. And we're currently developing the first white labels for these tour operators to make that happen, because that also makes sense, of course, because then you can really pull people directly to your own platform.
Totally. And like
Yeah.
now, how much does, say, SEO play a part in Travel Diaries app in getting product exposed and people, maybe
Yeah.
finding your newer customers through people who have already written on your
Yeah.
platform? Is it
Yeah.
a thing? And then I guess the extension of
Yeah.
that in the AI world is, what about in AI answers and that kind of stuff? Because AI
Yeah.
loves long form. It loves it, right? So,
Exactly. Yes. So I have to say that SEO has not been like a core focus of ours, but we do see that the user generated content is ranking higher and higher, because
mm,
indeed the search engines love it. And that's also a big opportunity. I think the user generated content in different ways, like it's good for SEO. The AI search engines love it, so they tend to bring it up fast. And also in a world where we have so much AI written content, it's even more valuable to have truly authentic user stories. And we started developing the first AI features in the app as well. We developed a voice to text feature, and with AI it can perfect what you've been telling your app to write. We want to launch an AI journaling feature, and I think it's super valuable, but I'm also hesitant because I think the power of this user generated content at the moment is that it's truly authentic, truly written by the user. And I think it's also super good and valuable that people continue to actually do that, to continue to write. Although I also understand that it makes sense to get a little bit of help from AI for the people that want that.
for sure.
Yeah,
And there's all sorts of people out there, right? There's different people
yeah,
that would
exactly.
never ever use it, and they're doing it for the
Yeah,
love of
exactly.
writing and their own writing. And so for them, it's
Yeah,
just a complete no. But there's a lot of people that
yeah,
would love to have the end product and like
yeah,
participate in the building of that end product, but also
yeah,
probably just don't have the wherewithal to sit down and do all
yeah,
that writing, right? So I think there
exactly. Yeah,
is a market for it. And I guess
yeah,
a
yeah,
fun fact on the Viderio journey,
yeah,
something that we did in one of our versions along the way was help content creators create product information from the content that they were happy to create, which
yeah.
was their videos and photos, right? And so
Right.
they would
Yeah,
give us those and we would give them back the story that went around those, and
Oh,
then
that's awesome.
they just had to edit it and
Yeah,
to
exactly.
put their own spin on it. But yeah, most of the information
Yeah,
was there, and they just had to edit it into their own thing.
cool.
And
Yeah,
we worked with tourism boards on that because they wanted that long form content, and there was lots of reasons to have a place to send people to measure how effective that content was when you're
yeah,
working with creators. And
yeah,
so I think there's a lot of
yeah,
stuff in there. But what I also loved was the way tour operators now gather feedback off their customers is
yeah,
generally send out a
yeah,
survey, right? And
yeah,
so
yeah,
the
exactly.
survey is pre-populated questions, and you're mainly giving a ranking or whatever, and there's generally a comment box, and like
Yeah,
less than 5% leave a comment, but the gold is
yeah,
always in the comment, right?
yeah,
If
yeah,
somebody
yeah,
said 3 on the hotels, well, what does that mean? Like,
yeah,
which
exactly.
hotel,
Yeah,
but
and why?
in a
Yeah,
journal, they've told you
yeah,
the whole story.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And of course, you don't want to sit down and have your staff reading 7,000 words of every
Yeah,
customer either, which is where the AI is so important, right? So
exactly. Yeah,
I think that's super interesting. Is there
yeah.
a customer live that your tour operator that you're working with that's using these tools at the moment?
Yeah, we have several customers live, and like I think the best use case that we have is with Travel Essence. So last year there were like 105, I think they have around 2,000, 3,000 travelers a year. There were 105 books ordered. We have around 80 diaries published publicly because we only analyzed the diaries that were published publicly, because you can
Correct.
also publish privately only
Hmm.
with friends and family, or you can keep it private to yourself. And then from those diaries, they on average had 18 chapters or so. So it's a huge amount of content. I actually have the analysis dashboard open here. If you then look at the reviews, for example, let me just quickly check. I think for the accommodations, we got 211 reviews, and 183 of those were positive experiences and 11 were negative, and the rest was neutral. And then you can also see which ones are the positive, which ones are the negatives, and what are they actually saying, what is the quote. So you can really easily take all of that out. And of course, that's super valuable because if multiple people are having a negative experience in a certain hotel, then you can take action there.
We've only got a couple of minutes left, but just run us through the business model of how you work with tour operators, and then let us
Yeah.
know how tour operators can find you should they be interested.
Yes. So how we work with tour operators is that basically they can offer their clients a printed book for free or access to the tool for free, motivating them to capture their adventures, where they only pay for the access or the voucher if people actually redeem, like if they actually order the printed book. And then we have several yearly licenses for the advertisements, the AI dashboards, and also, which I haven't mentioned yet, the AI content writer, which can transform this user-generated content into SEO blogs, social media posts, etc. So it's a very low, very easy. Yeah, we can set it up within a week. And if they want to work with us, they can just reach out to me on LinkedIn or through on my email address. Maybe you can put it in the show notes,
For
or
sure.
yeah.
I think it's such a valuable tool, and I love so much about it. And like I said, I'm sure I've been in marketing meetings where people have said, this would be amazing, or how could we ever do
Yeah,
it? So I reckon there's
yeah,
a desire out there, and then add all the
yeah,
other bits like the operational piece around the
yeah,
intelligence and
yeah,
everything in the AI world. If you have a data moat, you know,
yeah,
is where you actually capture value, and what you're
yeah,
doing is creating this
yeah,
huge volume of data that nobody else
yeah,
has. A piece
exactly.
written that nobody else has written it in that way or expressed it that way.
Yeah,
So I really
yeah.
think you're onto something.
Thank
But
you.
it's
Thanks
it's
so much.
been a massive and quick 30 minutes, but thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining us today.
great. Thank you so much. And we'll be in touch.
For sure.
All
That's it.
right.
That's it, everyone. A super fast one, but I hope you enjoyed it and really got something out of it. And if you need to get in touch with Veerle, check the show notes. The information will be down there below. Thanks very much, Veerle. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you again for the next show.
AIO in the travel, here we go. Got that AI on the low, taking flights to and fro, booking trips in a snap with a simple chat.